and welcome to episode number 65 of Gar Borras' Time Machine. Gar, this is going to be a real fun episode you've been planning for a while. We're going to be talking about the classic 1988 movie, The Rain Man. Now, when I say The Rain Man, what memories come back to you of seeing this film for the very first time?
Well, when I watched the movie, most movies, that are, big hits and everything have people walking away repeating lines from the movie.
That's right.
Famous lines, and Rain Man
is loaded with those.
It was of course, I'm an excellent driver. Because you know what I mean? Because the whole story behind that in the movie, is just such an awesome story.
Oh yeah.
I if I had a nickel for every time I have used that short sentence in many conversations over the years since I watched the movie, oh my gosh, I'd be rich. I mean, because I have said, of course, I'm an excellent driver a million times.
And let me ask you, Gar, when you say that, do the people you're talking to, do any of them have any idea what that's a reference to?
Well, it's funny because, the people that do, the first thing they do is chuckle. What I mean? And you can just tell by their reaction, they know where it came from. But then when somebody, somebody didn't and doesn't really know about that, you get the quizzical look.
What's this guy?
What are you talking about? You're not making sense.
And of course, Rain Man, Gar, as I said, is a classic 1988 comedy road drama movie starring, of course, Tom Cruise and Dustin Hoffman. Now, that's another thing I want to talk about, Gar, because often when we look back at some of our favorite movies, I mean, that's a thing that they did often back in the day. Like, they made a lot of these famous road movies where the whole premise of a movie was going like on a road trip.
The vacation.
Yeah, the crazy things that would happen along the way, Yeah, and this is obviously another one of those. Now, what did you think of the pairing of Tom Cruise and Dustin Hoffman? Because back in 1988, of course, Dustin Hoffman is a seasoned veteran actor. Tom Cruise is kind of fairly new on this Hollywood scene back then. Probably his biggest movie before this was like 2 years before, of course, the original Top Gun movie. So even for Tom Cruise, known as an action hero, early on in his career, this was quite a different type of movie for him.
It really was, and when I watched the movie, I really didn't know this, but after seeing the movie and hearing stories about it, I heard a story about how originally Dustin Hoffman was supposed to play Tom Cruise's character, and Tom Cruise was supposed to play Dustin Hoffman's character, and it was Dustin Hoffman that pushed to make that switch of characters.
Wow!
And that was one thing that I found out after the fact. But then after Dustin Hoffman had been doing the character, he really had second thoughts about it, and he felt that. Maybe what he was bringing to the character wasn't as good of an idea, and he was actually asking to be replaced. And the people behind putting the movie together wouldn't have it. Yeah. And eventually, it winds up getting released, and he gets a Best Actor's
Academy Award.
Oscar.
Yeah.
Academy Award, for that character. So, it's really kind of gives you an idea about how, when it was actually being made, the unsureness that was going on behind the scenes that we knew really nothing about.
Yeah. And another thing I was reading during the making of the film, once he, I guess, accepted that he was going to do the role of Raymond Babbitt, the title character of a Rain Man, he really got into what was called method acting, which is where when somebody is playing a part in a movie, they really live the part to the point of he has somebody call like even in his everyday life, he's playing the Rain Man, so he wants to be called Raymond all the time. He gets into that character so much that it was getting on the nerves of the other actors and the people making the film, because he was so into kind of doing the method acting thing.
Well, and it's funny because when he there was Rain Man. There was a thing I read in doing the research that it was derived from the Raymond character mispronouncing the name Raymond, and it's sounding more like Rain Man.
Yeah.
And so they just kind of ran with it, as this, this thing, and it was just really a mispronunciation of the name Raymond.
Yeah, and what's interesting is the calling the movie the Rain Man too. They also put a little bit that into the story. I don't know if you remember part of a movie where Tom Cruise is meeting Raymond, his brother, but he never even knew prior to this meeting that he even had a brother of any kind, and so he's telling him at the story, like in the part of the movie where they meet for the first time. It comes up this thing about the Rain Man, which he thought was his invisible friend as a child, and he comes to find out, no, that was actually my brother, but I knew nothing about at the time.
And there was the scene where Raymond, the Rain Man, freaked out about hot water. And I, basically that whole thing behind that was the reason why Raymond was put in an institution was because he had hurt Tom Cruise's character.
Yeah.
Charlie.
It's a flashback scene,
Yeah, and it had something to do with hot water.
Yeah.
And so he had hurt the baby. And that's the reason why they institutionalized him, and why Charlie didn't know he even had a brother.
And another thing, going back to 1988, Gar, the world was very different as far as we didn't see disabled people being talked about as much or out in the world as much as we do today. It was starting to happen, but it was kind of just... it's not as frequent as what you see today, but like when this movie came out, a lot of people going to see the movie kind of had no idea what an autistic person was, and then they come across this movie and they learn a little something about what it means to be an autistic person.
And I think that had a lot to do with why the movie was so successful, is because it basically pulled back the curtain and let everybody see what was behind the curtain about what goes on in the lives of people that have these. They're born with it. They have no choice.
Yeah.
And that's the life. That's the cards that they're dealt. That's the life that the choice that they get to live. And of course, I was a young adult back in the 80s, and back then, our public's knowledge about that was so much less than what we know now.
Yeah.
Back in those days, the normal term to call a person with Raymond's affliction was to call him an idiot savant.
Yeah, can you believe that?
That is what the public called a person that had that. And they had not advanced the description of it was basically with a description with the tact of a sledgehammer.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, Gar, because I can tell you, when I started doing the research for today's episode on the Rain Man, I cannot tell you how many articles or reviews I read on the movie where that is the exact description of what the movie's about, that it was based on the real life story of a real idiot savant. And again, that shows you how much the world has changed. The world has changed so much since 1980. I mean, back then, oftentimes people like this would also be referred to as retarded. And today people hear about it and they're like, oh my God, I can't believe they used to do that. But again, it was something new. And people, I guess, like so often, were learning as more people were becoming aware of people, these disabled people out there in the world. I can tell you through my own experience, because for many, many years now, for really since I got out of high school, I kind of fell into it accidentally. I work with these disabled adults, and I've had many varied experiences, positive and negative. Now, I can tell you when I first started doing it, it takes some getting used to, and that's how you know who's really kind of cut out to do that type of work, because there are some people that, they get scared and terrified, rightfully so, because they've never been around something like that. But, that's what they used to do. They used to call these people retarded, then eventually got to know they're developmentally disabled. And, like, you wouldn't go around calling somebody an idiot savant today. But, again, as we often talk in these episodes, that is another way that the world has so changed.
Yes, and I think that to me is a change for the better.
Sure.
Because to call somebody retarded has huge amounts of disrespect.
Sure.
Towards people that have no choice; they're born with it.
Yeah.
And just to look down your nose is a horrible human quality.
Oh,
and
sure.
that, by using those kind of labels to describe a person is hugely disrespectful.
Yeah.
Just like the term idiot savant.
Yeah.
It just has huge amounts of disrespect to someone that has absolutely no choice in the matter whatsoever. And just to, spew that out disrespectfully or with no respectful disregard is a horrible human quality that used to go rampant a long time ago when I was young, and is not rampant now. And and because I've seen both sides of the coin, it's an obvious change for the better.
Oh, sure. And just to kind of put my own personal experience out there a little more. A lot of times it is just plain ignorance. I'll give you a perfect example. A friend of mine, when he was going to college, I told him about what I did, and he kind of wanted to do the same type of thing. And so he asked me, would I come and give a lecture at his one of his college courses? I said sure. And so I was telling people a little bit about what I did, and that I worked with disabled people, and I just kind of to see what the response was I'd get. I asked people, do you know what it means when I say the word retarded? And I was about 2 or 3 people raised their hand, and most of the people said, it means stupid, somebody who's stupid. And so I had to educate these people. Now, first of all, retarded is like a form of being brain damaged, and usually people are born that way, like you said. They didn't get enough oxygen to their brain, or it could be any number of things. Whereas I also worked with another person who, he was considered brain damaged because he wasn't born like that. He got his brain damage as a result of being in an awful car accident, and then he had to totally relearn how to talk and everything, and so there's that. A lot of it is ignorance. And one more thing I'll say in regards to people being ignorant about these type of people. Oftentimes you'll hear people they'll be standing right next to the person, and they will say they're stupid or they're retarded or some such thing, and they think just maybe because the person's unable to speak. Excuse me, you're talking about the person. They can, just because they can't speak doesn't mean they can't hear what you're saying,
Well, one thing that is a true description of that type of person is that it's a sure sign of ignorance.
Yeah.
When you come across a person that is proud of their ignorance.
Yeah, but I will say then again, when I was speaking to my friend's course, on the flip side of that, it felt good to walk away from giving that lecture, and I had 2 or 3 people come up to me afterwards and said, "Wow, man, thanks for educating on me. I did not realize that when you're talking about retarded persons, it's somebody that was born like that." And so again, on the flip side, you can go away talking to ignorant people, maybe educating them. That's even the hope for a movie like The Rain Man. That see again, you go to see a movie like The Rain Man, and it touches at your heartstrings, Gar, for many, many reasons. But hopefully people went away, they had a good laugh. And it's amazing when you could have a movie about such a topic, and you're able to still make jokes throughout the movie and make people laugh. And that I think is a true sign of great writer. As far as writing a script for a movie like that, to be able to kind of tug at people's heartstrings and yet make them laugh, make them cry at the same time.
Well, and that's the special sauce of that movie was what, and really what made the movie so successful was because it wasn't your typical Hollywood movie that was put out. Yeah. And it had a profound effect on the audiences because what we've touched about already is it really had an educational aspect to the movie because most of the public really didn't know about this, and up until that point, the general public looked at a person that was a savant like that as a person that was mentally handicapped.
Yeah,
you know what I mean, and has nothing to offer society. And it really kind of opened people's eyes that, a person like that does have something to offer to society. Maybe it's what he has to offer is outside of the box, but it's still something positive to offer.
Sure.
And his story really had a profound effect on the audience watching the movie. Because the movie was loaded with scenes that not only explained, but also allowed the audience to see the heartfelt side of it.
Yeah.
The empathetic side of it.
Yeah.
Where there is an element of empathy that is. Really people should be able to give to people that have this type of, that are basically born with these cards that they're dealt with.
Well, the biggest difference, I think, in the world, as we sit here talking about these developmentally disabled people, Gar, is that now in 2024, we actually have something that people refer to as the autism spectrum. And what that is just like no two people are, no two so-called normal people are just alike. There's also the fact that, big misconception, people think, all people that are, mentally ill, they're all crazy, they're all kind of far out there, they're kind of all the same, and that's really not true because, again, their condition could be caused from any number of things, so no two autistic people are exactly alike, and so now we actually have a name for the condition. Not that they're an idiot savant. They're on the autism spectrum, and the spectrum is wide and high, low, and it's all over the place. I mean, another thing that they kind of highlight throughout telling the Rain Man story is the fact that he does these kind of interesting things. Like there's a scene in the movie where the waitress drops the matches and they all go over the floor, he takes one look and is able to, count that fast how many matches fell onto the floor. And you're like looking like, who else would be able to do that? That's kind of amazing. How did he do that? And then you ask yourself, okay, that's great, but what's he going to be able to do with that?
Well, and Tom Cruise figured that one out real quick in the movie.
Yeah.
When he's starting. Hey man, we can use this guy to freaking count cards in Vegas, or whatever.
Yeah.
Whenever they play, they have the advantage because this guy has the gift.
Yeah.
Now think about that. Yeah. I just used a descriptive word to describe something that for forever has been described as an idiot and retard.
Yeah.
But in truth, in that one aspect, it was a gift.
Oh, sure. And see, that was the other thing that's kind of highlighted throughout the movie, because even Tom Cruise, when they're in Vegas and they're winning all that money, and he's kind of taking advantage of his brother in that way, to benefit himself. You're kind of thinking, oh, what a creep to use his brother. But I'm sure there are plenty of other people that would have, done that. And then, I remember Tom Cruise's character saying, "Man, he's got the ability to do it." When the father dies at the beginning of the movie, he leaves all this money to take care of, Raymond. And he's like, I want my share. This is why does he, he gets all this money left him. The city gets all this money left to him, and he doesn't even know what to do with it,
Well,
yeah.
It's part of the story of the growth of Charlie.
Yeah.
The Tom Cruise character, because they have to have those scenes so you can see
the growth,
where he came from and what he grew from.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And it's really wonderful to see him. See him have these horrible human qualities where he sees it only as something to take advantage of.
Yeah.
But then by the end of the movie, Raymond becomes his brother that he loves.
Yeah.
And to me, I was really surprised when I watched the movie, because I didn't see that developing that way and everything like that. So at the very end of the movie, it was very heartfelt for me.
Yeah.
That's all I can say is my experience is I just felt that the way the movie ended was just such a perfect and wonderful ending.
Yeah, and here's another fun fact I learned about Rain Man. Of course, it says the film was released on December 16th, 1988, Gar. It was originally real-life brothers Dennis and Randy Quaid who were considered for the two starring roles of Raymond Babbitt and Charlie Babbitt. Now, that would have been a very different movie, not just because of different actors, but I wonder if you would have got two guys that were brothers in real life, if it would have been any easier to play the roles. What's your thought on that?
I'm sorry. Oh. I was fiddling.
Okay.
Hit me again.
Okay. I was basically saying that I learned this fun fact that originally when this film was kind of being cast, originally the two leading parts were offered to real life brothers Dennis and Randy Quaid. So my thought is this would have been a very different movie, not just because you'd had different actors, but do you think it would have helped any to have two guys that were really brothers in real life play the parts?
It's pure speculation.
Yeah, of course.
I mean?
Yeah.
With it never happening.
Yeah.
It's a guess.
Sure.
And in reality, there's a chance that the movie could have been just as successful, and then yet again, there's a chance that in a situation like this, you can't. It's almost like, trying to guess who's going to win the lottery or something like, you know what I mean? It's just like you have no idea just like a songwriter.
Yeah.
When a songwriter writes that song that becomes a gigantic hit, that songwriter does not know that song is going to be a gigantic hit
until it happens.
It's one of the songs that songwriter writes, but at the time of its conception, it's you don't know it's going to be a hit.
Oh,
and to make a speculation on something like that is akin to the same thing.
Sure, and
trying to guess what is going to be a hit.
And what I will say to that too, Gar,
I have said this when I hear a song for the first time. There has been a bunch of times I will hear a song for the first time, and I will immediately say that song is going to be a major hit.
Yeah.
And of course, I was right every time. But I didn't write the song.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I didn't write it, and if I was the writer, there's no way I'm going to know that it was going to be a hit. But I do know a hit when I hear one.
Yeah,
I can guarantee you that.
And how many times, Gar, in doing these episodes, have we learned stuff like this? For example, when we done our episode on, Happy Days, we learned that the role of Fonzie was originally offered to both John Travolta and Mickey Dolenz as the Monkees, and we kind of laugh at that. But then I could kind of see John Travolta, back in his young days, getting offered a role like that, of course. But after all these years, I really, just because of my love for the show Happy Days, I can't picture anybody else but Henry Winkler in that part. I'm sure other actors could have done it, but it's one of those things that we call iconic. Kind of like watching The Rain Man all these years later. I can't think of anybody but Tom Cruise or Dustin Hoffman doing those roles, but it's because that's the movie we love. That's the movie we saw,
Well, Rain Man is such a great movie.
Yeah.
And I really, really hope that if there's anyone that listens to this episode but has never seen the movie, I really hope it inspires that person to take a chance and check it out, because the movie is definitely not a waste of an hour and a half to 2 hours. It's not a waste, and you will walk away from the movie having a better understanding about that, and actually walk away from the movie having an increased understanding and empathy for a person that is born with that those cards being dealt to them.
Yeah, it's really the tale of two brothers, and what I like about the film is it's not your typical family film. I mean, like, I come from a typical family, me and mother, father, and a brother, and this movie starts off with conflict in the fact that you find out right away that him and his wealthy father have had a falling out. He's not too close, thinks he's a jerk, doesn't talk to him. And then eventually the father dies. We never see the father, but we find out his father dies. And he goes to the funeral only because, not to pay respects necessarily, but only because he wants to see what he's going to get in the will, or he assumes he's going to get his father's wealthy estate. Come to find out that he has his brother that kind of gets everything left to, except that he gets the car.
And of course, that's the same car that he lets Raymond drive, because through the movie he keeps repeating, "I'm an excellent driver, I'm an excellent driver, I'm an excellent driver." And that scene is such a wonderful scene. When he hands the keys to Raymond and says, "Okay, drive." And you know what I mean? I just absolutely loved that scene, because it was, when the scene was developing in front of my eyes, I had no idea what to expect. Was he going to be an excellent driver? You know what I mean? How is this going to turn out? And just those scenes that are so... I love watching movies and TV shows that have scenes that are unpredictable.
Yeah.
Usually is where magic happens in movies and TV shows, where something happens that is just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that is what they thought. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
or just appreciating the genius of coming up with, these things that are outside of the box.
Yeah, and
I just love unpredictability.
And Gar, another thing this film was loaded with, as we often go back and review these classic movies from our younger days that we just love to look back on. You also watch these, like when I'm rewatching this movie last week, The Rain Man, there are things that were in 1988 that were still around in the world that aren't today. I'll give you a perfect example of what I'm talking about. All throughout the movie, there's a reference to Kmart. I mean, Kmart doesn't even exist, a Kmart store anymore, but throughout the movie, we find out that not only does Raymond have to get his underwear at Kmart, it has to be at a specific Kmart, and he goes all through the movie quoting the exact address, the state and everything that it's in, and Charlie's like, oh, F this, Ray, we'll go to Kmart, we're going to Kmart near where we're at, we're not going to go all the way back, drive 400 miles back home to where you get, your specific Kmart. And there's references to stuff like Kmart, the People's Court, Wapner at 3 o'clock, gotta watch Wheel of Fortune at 7 o'clock, Jeopardy at 8, all throughout the movies, his little rituals are kind of revealed. And there's another scene too where they have to stop at some stranger's door at their farm. Hey, just help me out here. Let him watch. The People's Court.
So he could get his fill of Judge Wapner, so he wouldn't freak out.
Yeah. And those moments, you kind of, even though Charlie Babbitt is kind of an asshole, I say he is one. In those moments, you kind of feel a little sorry, like you feel his frustration. I mean, and then there's the one scene where he really just kind of loses. Oh, this is great. Now I find out. We can't go in. We don't go out in the rain. Oh my God!
Yes, and basically, what's going through his mind. What did I get myself into here?
Yeah, and what he got himself into is partly a huge part because of his greed. He's like, I'm not taking him back to the home. I'm gonna fight the hospital. I'm gonna get custody of him, and then I can get all his money. He finds out it doesn't work out that way. But then, like you said, by the end of the movie, he actually cares about what is in his brother's best interest. I mean, there's a final scene, kind of, where they meet with the doctors, and on one hand, Raymond says he wants to go live with his brother Charlie, and then he says he wants to go back to the home, and then Charlie has that aha moment where he's like, okay, yeah, I see what the doctor's saying. He says yes to everything. He doesn't really know what he wants. Yeah.
But that, and that's the growth of the Tom Cruise character.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's, that is a movie with a storyline. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. There's so many. Basically, what Hollywood has developed into now is cookie cutter. Mm-hmm. Because the people that are the executives in the office buildings of all of these studios and everything like that, they want to try to stack the deck in the favor of movies being successful, so they always go to the cookie cutter. The cookie cutter has horrible, predictable scripts. Yeah. With and they, if you don't have a good storyline, then dazzle with special effects, throw in a bunch of explosions and car chases and all of this action stuff and everything. and the movie will be a success. And there is a huge faction of the buying public that goes to movies that will eat that up. They don't care that the storyline is mundane. They don't care that it's predictable. They love the special effects. They love the explosions and the car chases and the bombs and the guns and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And, so that there is that it's undeniable that you can, but that is not all of the buying public. There is also a huge, gigantic portion of the public that really gravitates more towards storylines, well-scripted stories, well-acted stories, and, with storylines that have more to do with the human condition and the bouncing of people off of people, things like that. And so the Rain Man goes in that category.
Yeah.
And of course the movie was a huge success, so there is a definite guarantee that large buying public does exist.
Oh, sure.
But if we listen to the people that are running the studios, all we would ever watch are stuff with explosions and car chases and guns and all of this other stuff, and that's all we would watch.
Yeah. And Gar, another interesting thing that just popped into my head as we're talking about this is back in 1988, another thing that was different about the world is social media did not exist. Now, I could imagine if there was social media around at the time, because, again, it's one of the things that we remember from a movie. Something as simple as talking about the fact that the Rain Man had to buy his underwear at Kmart. I could imagine there would have been some kind of social media kind of campaign to go along with that, or you'd have people, as funny as it may sound, start buying their underwear at Kmart because they heard the Rain Man bought his it sounds silly, but I remember
that's what the public does.
But I even remember back, when the movie first came out, gotta go to Kmart.
I'm willing to bet that people did do that.
Yeah.
Not to make it a gigantic phenomenon.
Yeah.
But I'm sure there was an element of society, maybe a small element, that did go to Kmart and buy their underwear because of the Rain
Or
Man.
even something as simple as, I'm gonna watch a People's Court now because they talked about it in the Rain Man, or I'm gonna watch Jeopardy or Wheel of Fortune.
Yes.
Those
There
things.
is that is a human characteristic of our society, that we do like to emulate, whatever it is that we like.
And
what I mean?
And how funny is it, Gar? All these years later, when we bring up the subject of a Rain Man, or you talk about to anybody, those are the reference points. Those are the things people remember.
Yes.
And I don't know.
And to this day, I still will repeat over and over in all kinds of different social settings, I'm an excellent driver. I'm an excellent driver. That scene was such a wonderful scene for me that it has just prompted me to repeat that over and over for literally decades.
Hey, Gar, I was just thinking it'd be funny, one of your future concerts, if you get up on stage and you repeat that into the microphone. Hey,
don't put it past me.
How's everybody going? I'm an excellent driver.
I'll save that. I'll save that for the next time you come to one of my shows.
That'd be funny. Another fun fact, Gar, if you can even imagine, Bill Murray was originally offered the part of a Rain Man too. I mean, think of all these people that were considered for this, and ultimately, I do think they went with the right guy.
Oh, just like you were saying earlier, it's hard to imagine anyone else playing those two parts other than Tom Cruise and Dustin Hoffman. It really was just, I use this so often, but it really was another one of those cases of having those two play those two characters. They captured lightning in a bottle. Yeah, they really did do that.
Yeah, I don't know if they'd be able to get away with this, but I would, even all these years later, I would love to see, because, Tom Cruise is even in his 60s, and Dustin Hoffman, I think he's 70-something, almost 80 years old. I would love, to finally do, a part two. Could you imagine all these years later, he goes to reunite with his brother Raymond or visit him at the home or whatever, they go on another road trip. Could you imagine in their, at that age in their life, what that movie would be like?
Well, you never say never, Jason.
Yeah, and
you know what I mean? That's all I can say is because, right now, but you never know what's going through somebody's mind that could be a writer.
Yeah, and
you know what I mean?
And the other thing that kind of surprises me is that, they're always looking to remake old movies. And to your point, you just said, well, who really knows? Maybe somebody's, in talks about that. But I think that enough time has not passed yet, because this is still a very iconic movie, and again, it'd be very interesting to see if they were to get new actors and reboot it. Who would you get to do those two parts? And I guess the casting call is open, but it's almost kind of like, if you look at if you'll remember, we did an episode on the original version of The Nutty Professor with Jerry Lewis. A lot of people don't even know that film exists, because they're younger or whatever. And the only version of that they think is the Eddie Murphy version. But again, when Eddie Murphy remade the Nutty Professor, it's taken away from the fact that Jerry Lewis is white and he's black. It's still a very different kind of story being told. It's based on this original movie, but they're two totally very different movies, if you know what I'm talking about.
Totally changed the story. Totally changed it. Yeah. And for me, the original Jerry Lewis one, it's really the poster child of why remakes are always viewed by the studios that they're stacking the deck in their favor because they're doing a remake, and it's they're hoping that it's going to be just as successful as the original, because they're thinking that because it is a remake that it can capitalize on the success of the original and kind of boost off of that. But the truth of the matter is, historically, look at all these remakes, and they're never as successful as the original.
No.
I'd say maybe one or two of them might have eclipsed what the original was able to achieve, but 90% of the remakes are disappointments.
And
I am not a fan of remakes. I just, for me, Buddy Love aspect of the original Nutty Professor, it was just the epitome of, at that time, the cool guy. Because it's socially in the 60s, that was a big freaking deal in society in the 60s. The cool guy. The guy, there was everybody, there was the, at every level of society, there was always that guy that had that something. The cool guy. You know what I mean?
The it thing, the it factor.
And that Buddy Love character in The Nutty Professor was basically what every guy wanted to be at that time in the 1960s.
Sure.
That is what Buddy Love was. And when you take and when you take that movie that is just loaded with all kinds of hilarious scenes, and then you remake it, and you completely change the storyline, why even call it a remake?
Oh, yeah.
Really? Why even call it a remake? It's just the studios did that to cheat and try to capitalize on the original one's success. And to me, if you look at the amount of success, how much the public gravitated towards the remake versus how much the public loved the original. And I'm sorry, the remake was not as good.
Yeah.
And that is the case for almost all remakes. They are disappointments, and I just basically refuse to go to remakes anymore.
Yeah.
I have been disappointed so many times that I just refuse. Once something becomes a remake, even Get Smart, I wouldn't even watch the remake of that.
Yeah, I mean, that's a modern take, and it's nothing like the original.
Yes, and why, if you're gonna do a remake, and the remake has absolutely nothing to do with the storyline of the original, why are you even calling it a remake?
Yeah,
it's ridiculous. It's an insult to my intelligence.
Yeah,
I don't think I'm the only one that feels that way.
I will say this, Gar. I recently saw a preview for an upcoming holiday movie. It's apparently they're going to release a movie version of Wicked. For anybody who knows, Wicked is kind of a story that was created off of The Wizard of Oz. They made a musical and a play out of it. Now, I've seen the preview, and visually, it's like beautiful visual eye candy, what you would kind of expect. And so I would, visually, I think it looks beautiful. I will probably go see it, but I do think there's part of me that's going to be kind of disappointed because I get it's kind of a modern take on a classic. And see, that's the thing I kind of agree with you that, the original film was so spectacular. There's no way, even though you get this great visual eye candy. I mean, I was impressed with what I saw on the screen, but again, I know when I go see it, it's not going to be as spectacular as the first time I saw The Wizard of Oz.
No, and how do you outdo one of the movies that is considered one of the greatest movies ever made?
Yeah.
That has lasted in popularity for almost a century now.
Yeah.
Almost a century. Think about that.
Yeah, and
the movie is still popular today.
Yeah, and Gar...
And the movie was made in 1939.
Yeah, and Gar,
we're almost going on a century now.
We did an episode on The Wizard of Oz, and one thing I remember in watching the movie in preparation to do the episode was, and it's something that people aren't even aware maybe when they're watching the film, and I was guilty of this. I'm watching the film, and of course it starts out in black and white, and then all of a sudden as they start going down the golden brick road, the yellow brick road, all of a sudden color just streams into the movie that wasn't there, and it's one of those things, unless you're like really paying attention, you almost don't notice.
Well, it's because of this society that we grew in.
Yeah.
Especially the younger crowd, and rightly so.
Yeah.
They're a different generation, and what they're used to is completely different than my generation. But my generation and people that are older, that was profound that they did
that. Yeah, back in the day. Yeah, 1939.
Yeah, because, black and white was the norm at that time.
Sure.
And color was the new vivid, oh my God, and, angels, you can hear angels singing in the background. It's just this new revelation. And now, because we're so far removed and it's all the norm and everybody's used to it, nobody sees it in that way because it's completely out of context now.
Yeah.
But at that time, it really had a profound effect on the audience because it really doubled down on the effect of what their life was really like. And then this whole fantasy thing about her experience, in Neverland, or I don't know what you call it. Was it Neverland or the Land of Oz?
Michael, yeah. I mean? Yeah.
So it really added more impact to those differences, and where you really saw the opening scenes as more as people in their regular life, and how now everything has got this vivid color.
Oh yeah,
it was very profound at the time.
Now, Gar, just to further prove the point of what a successful film this was. Rain Man actually received 8 Academy Award nominations. They did win 4 awards, which included Best Picture, Best Director, Best Film, and of course, Best Actor for Dustin Hoffman.
And he was worried that he was not the right person to play that character. Can you imagine that?
Yeah, now
he got a freaking Oscar for it.
Yeah,
and he was like demanding to be replaced.
Yeah,
think about that.
Yeah, and of course he played in other notable roles. I mean, probably his most famous one, which I do think if I remember, he won an award for, was Tootsie, and that was a totally different part. But then, since then, this is one of the more iconic roles he's done for Rain Man, and it's kind of what people will remember him for. It said, for 1 year prior to playing the role of Raymond Babbitt, Dustin Hoffman studied to play the role by educating himself on other autistic people, Gar. And it says that Dustin Hoffman had experience working with disabled people when he was younger and worked at the New York Psychiatric Institute. Wow, can you imagine? I mean, who would have known?
Well, it's just another one of those things that, a qualification that we didn't even know about.
Yeah. Now, Gar, here's another. You also remember the role, the part of the film where Raymond, we find out, is afraid to get on plane. He just refused to get on the plane. He's scared to get on, and he's listing all the different airlines that have crashed or haven't crashed, and so he'll only fly on a specific...
That's a famous scene. That's a big scene.
Yeah. Well, okay, here's interesting trivia regarding the film. It said, remember, the film came out in 1988. Well, it said, in June 1989, at least 15 major airlines showed an edited version of the film where the scene of Raymond refusing to fly, and then named the companies who had crashed, because the airlines did not want their customers to get a fear of flying and seeing the film, as they're up in the air, and fear of crashing. They took the scene out and would only show an edited version of the film. Can you believe that?
I mean, it totally makes sense because they're doing it as an in-flight entertainment.
Yeah.
And who wants to put bad press in front of the people that are actually flying on their plane?
And then I guess
I mean? It totally makes sense, that they would do that, but then again, what does that say about those airlines' track records that they had to go as far as to do that?
And then
and also it really points out, because I read that too, that all the way up until now, Qantas still has that same record.
Yeah,
they have a perfect record. They don't have any planes ever going down and crashing and people dying.
And then I guess
that is how good their record is.
And then I guess the other companies got a little upset that they actually listed those statistics in the film.
Well, unfortunately, why get upset at somebody for telling the truth to the public?
Yeah.
If you don't like it, then why didn't you do something about it?
Yeah.
And it really, points to Boeing right now.
Yeah.
Because the general public knows right now that the reason why all these things are happening is because Boeing put their priority on profits over human safety.
Yeah. I mean, Gar, this is, I think, a perfect place to wrap up today's episode in reference to I'm an excellent driver. After filming Wrapped on Rain Man, Dustin Hoffman, get this, purchased the 1949 Buick convertible that was used in the movie. He kept it in his collection for 34 years before he auctioned it off in January of 2022. So he bought that convertible that was used in the film, had it in his collection up until just 2 years ago. Can you imagine? Can you imagine being able to do that? First of all.
It's nice to be Dustin Hoffman.
Yeah, and can you imagine the collector that probably bought it from him? That's pretty amazing to have in his collection, I would imagine.
Getting a little off topic, but man, I would not mind having one of those old cars like that, like a 1949 Buick and stuff. Those cars, when I was younger, I worked on all my cars, and those cars were made during a time period that you could, because they make cars now, they make them on purpose that you can't fix them.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's a completely different world that we live in now. But man, I would love to have a car like that.
Yeah, it's kind of like those old tube TVs. I don't know. There's something about them that I had TVs like that lasted 15, 20 years. The more modern ones you buy, they'll last 2 or 3 years. I even asked somebody, "Oh yeah, they don't make TVs to last to last much longer than just a couple years."
Well, yeah, because we live in a society now that's all about profits. It doesn't matter what. It's all about profits. Nobody cares about human safety. Nobody cares about anything other than profits.
Yeah.
So making, a long time ago, it was all about quality. Making things to last, buying toasters because they were made well and they lasted. And those were selling aspects, selling points that don't, apply anymore because, we live in a society that is completely different from the societies that existed in the 60s and the 70s and the 80s. These are all the decades that I grew up in.
Yeah.
And I know because I lived in those societies, and I'm telling you, the society we live in now is completely and totally different.
Sure.
It doesn't have very much resemblance to the old societies that used to be of the past.
Yeah. It just doesn't. Well, Gar, this was fun looking back on the Rain Man because again, I'll tell you how I really came up with the idea to do this was I myself have a huge DVD collection. I'm thinking of things to do an episode on, and I was cleaning up my house one day and I came across my copy on DVD and I thought that was such a funny film. And I tell you, when I watched the film last week to prep for the show we were supposed to do, a week ago, I just, it all came back to me. Just a great film. I would recommend, like you said, anybody see it. I mean, it'll pull at your heartstrings. I mean, there's no way it can't. I mean, and then it kind of has a happy ending where, Tom Cruise turns up to not to be such an asshole we all think he is throughout the film.
Yeah, he grows as a human being.
Yeah.
And that's a great story. That's something that we should be teaching to all of our generation.
Yeah, and can you imagine? Again, it's not your typical family. I mean, can you imagine if you were Charlie Babbitt and you're finding out, not only that this other guy gets all the money you think you're going to get, but you have this brother that you never knew about.
Yeah, it's a wonderful story. Those are the kind of movies I gravitate towards. I love a wonderful, a really highly intelligent, scripted story with really, really good acting, that is what makes me happy when I'm watching something like that. And I am just, I'm not disrespecting anyone that likes action movies and these type of movies that have very predictive storylines and stuff like that, because there is a place for that, and there is a hunger for that from our society. But all I can say is my personal preference are stories like this. There's stories about people, stories about human conditions, stories about the growth of a person, how you can start out this way, but you can wind up learning how you really don't like how you are, and you really want to make a change.
Sure.
That is a human element full of beautiful stories that we can all learn from to become better people.
Oh, sure.
And this movie, I'm amassing a huge library of movies and TV shows, and having it all right there on my, just easily accessible on my computer.
Yeah.
And Rain Man just got added recently to my library.
Wow.
It's just that is an example of the type of stuff that exists in my library.
Yeah, and like you said, there's room for different types of movies. I'm a fan of many different types of movies. In closing, though, Gar, I will say this is there was no question going back to the Academy Awards in 1988. When you find out who's good, who's up for the Best Actor, where there was no doubt about that he was going to get it or that he deserved to get it. You know what I mean? Whereas I will say the Academy Awards have greatly changed. It used to be something that I would love to tune into every year. I mean, it's turned into something where people lecture you. They tell you what you should and shouldn't like. And worst of all, not that I don't think some of these other movies aren't deserving, but it's not what it once was, to the point that I can tell you almost every year when the Academy Awards come and go, almost the last several years, I could say, all the winners, what's that? I never even heard of that movie, and yet it won for Best Actor, or it's something that maybe was seen on Netflix but wasn't even in the movie theater, and it is so different from what it once was,
Yeah, yes. To win an Academy Award back in the 80s was a symbol of major achievement. But and to be able to actually win it, you really had to have a profound performance. It really had to be profound. And nowadays I see people winning Oscars, and they're not profound performance. They're not even groundbreaking. They're just, they're good performances, well acted performances, but not what I grew up seeing as what was worthy of winning. What you would have, the type of performance that you would have to do in a movie to actually win an Oscar. It has been diluted.
Because
in a big way. It really has been diluted.
Because Dustin Hoffman winning for Rain Man, I think there's nobody that thinks he shouldn't have got it. I mean, people have their different opinion maybe of who was nominated, but at least all those movies that were nominated in 1988, I guarantee you that everybody had heard of those movies. Everybody had probably seen those movies that were nominated. But today, there's a truckload of stuff getting nominated that nobody's even heard of. It's like, how can that really win for Best Picture when half the people haven't even seen the movie? But it's turned into more, the Academy picking what they want as opposed to what the general public thinks,
Well, and you could say that about pretty much any awards show, whether it be musical awards or movie or TV. it really has become more of a soundbox promotional vehicle.
Yeah.
It really has, and it has lost its whole thing about major achievement. Taking your talent to its highest level to be able to win an award like that. That's what it used to be.
Yeah.
And nowadays I'm just seeing performances that are winning that are not of the same kind of level of what it used to be in the past.
Yeah.
Where the performance were really much more profound, and you knew when you were watching it that it was a performance that was worthy of winning an Oscar.
Yeah, like when Dustin Hoffman.
I'll say this. There's the opening scene in Glenn Ross.
Yeah.
That I don't think that Alec Baldwin won an Oscar for that scene.
Yeah.
But that is an Oscar-winning, worthy scene.
Sure.
In that opening scene of that movie, that particular performance is an Oscar-winning level performance.
No doubt. No doubt. Yeah.
And that's what I'm talking about. What I'm seeing people winning Oscars for now are not those kind of performances.
Oh, yeah.
They're not that kind of taking your talent to its highest level, to be able to achieve that kind of performance. And if anybody wants to know what I'm talking about, all you got to do is just bust out Glenn Ross and just watch it. Watch that opening scene. It is powerful. Wow. It is impactful. It makes you stop and watch it all the way to the end of that scene.
Yeah, and a final thing I'll say on that is, there's also a thing just about the fact that a movie was nominated back in the day. If you didn't necessarily have to win, but just to Academy Award nominated movie, people would go see the movie again, after the fact.
Yes. Yeah. Just being nominated was considered a major achievement.
As they used to say,
all of that is diluted nowadays. It's almost like so they cover their eyes and pull something out of a hat, to announce who won.
As they used to say back in the day,
it really has that kind of feel to it, and that's why I really don't even watch awards shows anymore, and I don't even really give it much credibility, because it's not what it started out to be. What all of these awards started out to be was really wonderful. It was a acknowledgement of an incredible achievement.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
we're getting to that point, Gar.
A little bit off topic, but it was a wonderful, wonderful way to go, and a wonderful way to end this episode.
And the final thing I was going to say is to let people know next time when we get together and do this in 2 weeks, we're going to be talking about the 50th anniversary of one of our classic all-time favorite shows, Happy Days. Now, people are going to probably be thinking, hey, wait a minute, they already did an episode on Happy Days. Yes, but, and this is going to be the first time, Gar, we've ever done this, but there's no rule that says we can't revisit something. I think the fact that the show is celebrating 50 years is worthy of doing a second episode, and we're going to get into a little bit of the facts, but mostly about our opinions, our favorite episodes, our favorite characters, the show's kind of place in the pop culture after 50 years of being on the air. So we're going to get into all that, and it'll be a lot of fun.
That's right. Absolutely guaranteed not to be a repeat.
And final thing,
it's going to be a brand new, all new episode.
And I want everybody to, when they think of Gar Borras, remember, he's an excellent driver.